Iberian Airways Flight 268 to Barcelona is now ready for boarding. Will all passengers for this flight proceed to Gate 42?
We have taken to traveling since the beginning of time, whether it be to better our lives, escape oppression, curiosity, or just fill our lulls with a little leisure. There's one thing we can all agree on. It's always an enriching experience. All aboard! I'm going to take you on a joyful journey through the wide world of travel. Pack your bags. We're going on a vibrant voyage on today's FYI. Welcome to For Your Info.
En inglés.
You got it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of your favorite podcast. Well, I don't know if it's your favorite, but I hope we're at least one of your favorites or in your top 3. If you haven't figured it out yet, we're going to talk about traveling today. That's right, travel. Now, let's start with those 2 words because oftentimes I've noticed that they're confusing for my students. So the word trip is un viaje. It's a noun, and we use it in this context. We're going on a trip. To go on a trip. I've heard students say, I'm going on a travel. And this is confusing because travel is a verb. I like traveling. I like to travel. And travel is also a noun. When we talk about the industry, we're talking about travel in general. And it's a noun in that case. But we don't use it the same way as the word trip. I'm going on a trip, me voy de viaje. Now, I have to be honest. The reason I chose to look at travel today is because I have cabin fever. Now, what is cabin fever? Cabin fever is this feeling like you've been cooped up at home for too long. To be cooped up is to feel like you're enclosed. I think you would say encerrado in Spanish. And it's interesting that a chicken coop es una gallinera. If you feel all cooped up, maybe you feel like a chicken in a coop. But I don't think I'm alone. I'm not the only one with itchy feet. Have you heard this expression before? To have itchy feet means you really feel like traveling. You have a desire to travel. You haven't traveled in a long time, many times. And I think, unfortunately, we are all in the same boat. This is a good expression that means we're all in the same situation. None of us have traveled recently due to the COVID situation. So I think everybody is suffering from, to suffer from is padecer de, everybody is suffering from cabin fever on one level or another. Everybody has itchy feet. And when I say itchy feet, again, I don't mean athlete's foot. I mean itchy feet, ganas de viajar, el mono de viajar. That's an interesting one because tener el mono is I'm itching to. So tengo el mono de viajar, I'm itching to travel. So I figured we could go on a virtual journey today and travel to different places with your English. What do you say? Are you guys on board? Great. Let's get started. As always, I like to look at the intro. I said we have taken to traveling since the beginning of time. If you take to something, it means you really start to like it. So this is a good one because I know you all know the word take. But to take to something is empezar a cogerle el gustillo, I think you say, to start to like something. So we have taken to traveling since the beginning of time. On another show, we looked at the dawn of time. A synonym is the beginning of time, whether it be to better our lives. Now, that's an interesting one because we can say to improve our lives or to better our lives. And I know many of you are familiar with the word better, but it's also a verb. You are trying to better your English right now. You are trying to improve your English right now. Then I said whether it's to escape oppression, and many people traveled not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. No les quedaba otra elección. They had no other choice. And then there's always curiosity. And I think most people travel nowadays because they're curious. They want to explore new things. They want to discover new things. They want to find out more about the world and in turn about themselves. Now here I go with my alliteration again. You know I love my alliteration. I had to do it. Sorry guys, I just can't help it. No lo puedo evitar. I said to fill our lulls with a little leisure. La 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 la. To fill our lulls with a little leisure. Now to fill is obviously llenar. Be careful though, I've had a lot of students who mix up the word fill and full. So full is the adjective. The glass is half full. You have to fill it up. See, fill being the verb, full being the adjective. And lulls, this is a good word. I like this word lulls. Well, lulls are quiet moments, moments where there's not too much happening. A lull, L-U-L-L. Another way to say it would be a period of calm. And the word leisure, this is an interesting word. This word is ocio. The British say leisure. We say leisure. So for the British, the word pleasure and leisure rhyme. For Americans, it's leisure, ocio. Then I went on to say there's one thing that we can all agree on. Remember, the preposition we use with agree is on. We can agree on this. We can agree on that. It's always an enriching experience. And I think you know that word. It's pretty logical. Enriquecedor. Enriching experience. Then I had to throw in the classic cliche, all aboard. Todos a bordo, and a train whistle, which is kind of weird. If you guys were paying attention, remember, prestar atención is to pay attention. If you guys were paying attention, then you'll realize that at the beginning, I used airport announcements, and at the end, I used a train leaving the station. Well, that's because I didn't want to leave anybody out. No quería omitir a nadie. We love all kinds of travelers on this show. And we're going to look at that later. We'll look at all the different kinds of travel out there and the associated vocabulary. We'll look at cruises and planes and even old school traveling when we look at the history of travel. Then you heard that train whistle. You know, I had to put it in there. And as if there weren't enough alliteration already, I got some more alliteration for you. I said in the last sentences, I'm going to take you on a joyful journey. Now, joyful means full of joy. Joy is another way to say happiness. It reminds me of that famous Christmas song. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Or if you're a Ren and Stimpy fan, the cartoon Ren and Stimpy, their famous song was Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy. So it's a good word to know, joyful. A joyful journey. And the word journey is a false friend. Because remember, a journey is a voyage. It's a trip. Una jornada is a day. So don't get mixed up with those two. And even more alliteration, the wide world of travel. Wide being in Spanish, amplio. So pack your bags. Now notice I didn't say make the suitcase or do the suitcase. I said pack your bags because we don't say make the suitcase. Unless, of course, you work at Samsonite. But normal travelers, we pack. Or we pack our bags, or we pack our suitcase. Oh, and while we're talking about the word suitcase, I want to look at the ending of the word baggage and luggage. Pronounce those words with me because a lot of people pronounce them age because logically they end with A-G-E. However, it's pronounced like bridge, the word puente in Spanish. So baggage, luggage. It's a little trick for pronouncing those A-G-E endings or suffixes, sufijos. And you thought I was done with the alliteration? No way. I put a lot of it in there. I said we're going on a vibrant voyage. And another way to say trip is a voyage. It sounds even more poetic. And the word vibrant is a good word to use when we describe traveling. It's in Spanish, brillante, vivo, dinámico. Another way we say this in English is lively. Many people say that New York and Madrid are lively cities. All right, so as we always do, let's go back and find the roots. When did we start traveling? Well, let's look at when the word travel came into our dictionary. According to many linguists, according to us, según, the word travel was first used in the 14th century. But this is when they first started using the word, and the word became an official word. But people were traveling way before that, much earlier than that. So before we look deeper into the history of traveling, we should make a distinction between travelers and explorers. Some of the earliest travelers were explorers. They were out there exploring new territory, as we call it, uncharted territory, and doing research and discovering new lands. But again, those guys had ulterior motives. They had an objective. They had an aim. I'm talking about normal travelers, people who traveled just for the heck of it, por si las moscas, because they wanted to. Because they wanted to learn, because they wanted to see other places. So when did travelers like you and me start traveling? Well, I guess we could sum this up with a very common expression that I think you use in Spanish too. All roads lead to Rome. Todas las carreteras llevan a la Roma. So the first people who started to travel for enjoyment or for pleasure, they were the Romans. That's right, the wealthy Romans. Remember, at first, like everything, it's open to wealthy people. Wealthy is another way to say rich. Another synonym for that is well-to-do or affluent. Muchas formas de decir adinerado. And I think that holds true today. The wealthy people are the people who go on vacation the most. Unfortunately, I'm not in that category. But wealthy Romans would go to their summer villas and disconnect. They would get away from the hustle and bustle, el ajetreo, of the city. And what made that possible? Well, that idiom I just told you. All roads lead to Rome. The Romans built roads. And what do you need to travel? Roads. Unless you're blazing your own trail. If you guys are basketball fans, you'll know that one. A trailblazer is someone who goes first on a trail. We use it to say a pioneer, a trailblazer. So the Romans would be the original trailblazers. They made roads, a network, una red, of roads. And they could travel not only quickly, but safely. They didn't have to worry about rocks falling on them. And people were encouraged then to say, hey, let's use these roads now that we've got them. But again, this was something reserved exclusively for the aristocratic classes, the upper class. But evidence shows that the Romans were not just traveling to relax and disconnect from their busy lives in the city. They also had a desire to learn, which is linked to a lot of traveling. Many people travel today because they want to learn. They want to enrich themselves, as we said in the intro. So the Romans, as far back as Rome, they believed that traveling was an excellent way to learn about other cultures by observing their art, their architecture, their language, and, well, their food, their traditions. And also, this is something that I've noticed, and maybe you'll agree or disagree with me here. I feel like when you travel, you don't only get to know other places, but it teaches you a little bit about yourself and where you are in the world, and how where you come from is unique and special, and why. I always say traveling puts us in our place. So then we fast forward to the Middle Ages. And in the Middle Ages, people were a bit boring. Even the rich people. Yeah, well, no offense, but most of the traveling that was done in the Middle Ages, according to historians, was pilgrimages. I think you say in Spanish, peregrinajes. This is where pilgrims would travel to a religious site, a holy site. The first one that comes to mind is Santiago de Compostela. This is a perfect example, and it was very popular. Still is. But hey, at least these people were getting around, they were visiting other countries, they were hearing other languages, and they were exposing themselves to other cultures, all while practicing their faith, su fe. That's on my bucket list, by the way. Mi lista de cosas que quiero hacer antes de morir. I've got to do the Camino de Santiago. It seems amazing. Hey, I'm open to recommendations if you have any. Then we move into the 17th century, and this is when something called the Grand Tour surfaced. When something surfaces, it comes about. Aparece. Llega al superficie, literalmente. Surface. And it was something called the Grand Tour, something that became very trendy, very fashionable among young aristocrats. This was at the beginning of the 17th century. As part of their education, they would go on these journeys and visit famous European cities. Now, we're talking about the 17th century right now, but does this remind you guys of something more common, more modern these days? Backpacking. That's right, the Eurorail, traveling around Europe on a shoestring budget. Do you know this expression? To travel on a shoestring budget, it means con poco presupuesto. You don't have a lot of money. But these guys weren't traveling on a shoestring budget. No way. They were aristocrats. They were rolling in it. Forrados. And they would do like a route, una ruta. And they would go to cities such as London, Paris, Rome, Venice. As I said, this sounds very familiar to my Euro backpacking trip I took many years ago. I went to all of these cities. So guys, we didn't invent anything new. They've been doing a route, a Euro route, since the 17th century. Now, at first, it wasn't organized. It was just young people who decided we're going to go out there and we're going to see these amazing countries. We're going to see these neighboring countries. A neighboring country is uno que es vecino. And for these guys, too, it was a rite of passage, un rito, I think you say. So eventually tours started organizing. They started organizing this, and it became known as the Grand Tour. And it was a circuit that many rich people who could afford it did, especially young people. It also reminds me a little bit of the gap year. I think this is more of a British thing, but a gap year is basically, if I'm not mistaken, a year that you take off, que coges libre, from your studies and you go out and travel. So these ideas are still seen. This idea of the Grand Tour is seen in backpacking. It's seen in this gap year. Everybody knows the importance of an education, but I think people started to realize that you don't just get an education in a classroom. You get an education from doing things, from getting experiences, from experiencing new things. So everything kept progressing. And of course, as everything, gets bigger and bigger, well, it becomes more accessible to the general public, to the middle class, until you get what we have today, even low cost. I think we live in an age, in una edad, where anybody can travel, really. So then we go to the 19th century. Now, why was the 19th century so important? Well, before the railway system was invented, most people traveled on foot. Another option was by water. Of course, if you were going on a ship. I think of the Titanic. I think of these big ocean liners. But it wasn't until about the 1840s when there was a huge network that was built, a network of railways, and that really urged people to get out there and travel for fun, for pleasure. And it's no surprise that at that time, the first travel agency came about. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that travel agency in the bonus part of today's show. There's some sad news, though. Just recently, this company went out of business. They went bankrupt. But I'll tell you more about their story and how they were pioneers in the travel business in the bonus part of today's show. Plus, I'll give you some good vocabulary for when you're booking your next trip. Obviously, to book is reservar. So trains, that was such a big thing because now this was connecting places that had never been connected before. Trains were getting faster, bigger, more powerful, and of course the Industrial Revolution just kept pushing that forward and forward until you get what we have today. I mean, we have trains that go 300 kilometers per hour. Your AVE train in Spain, which we call them high-speed trains, or high-speed rail would be the whole area. So now the 20th century, people had more options than ever. You could go by boat, you could travel by train, and then came the mother of all travel. And well, I'm a bit biased, un poco sesgado, because I love aviation. As many of you know, I'm an av geek. But the airplane, and specifically the jet engine, changed the way we travel. I always tell people the original internet, the original thing that was connecting us before Facebook and all this was air travel. And before that, it was travel by sea. And before that, by foot, and so on and so forth. So the 20th century was really big, especially after the Second World War. Now, there was a rise in air travel. And this, well, let people travel all around the world. It made the world such a smaller place. And now, if you think about it, we can be anywhere in the world in less than 2 days. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I think you can tell I really miss traveling. To use the word I used at the beginning of the show, I'm itching to get on a plane and travel. Okay, let's talk about some different types of travel. We mentioned them and the order that they came in, but let's take a look at them more in depth. The first one we said was walking, and this was the original traveling. You didn't have another option unless you had a horse and carriage, so you walked. Now people hike. That's when you do senderismo, to go hiking. I love the expression, take a hike. That's like, vete a tomar viento. And it's still popular. That's one of the cool things about hiking and these walking trips. They're still popular. I know a lot of people who have done the Camino de Santiago recently, and they're dying to do it again. And what's great about these kind of trips is they're eco-friendly. You're not generating a huge carbon footprint every time you walk or get on your bike, which is another form of travel that has gotten very popular. With the invention of mountain bikes, now people could go off-road. I feel very lucky here in Spain, even though I haven't taken advantage of it yet. But in Spain, you guys have something called Via Verde. And they're basically old train tracks that have been turned into trails all through the woods that you can go hiking and you can ride your bike or just take a walk with your family. If you guys haven't seen this, look into it. Via Verde. I'm dying to go. Now, if I can just find some free time. And according to the numbers I have here, the figures, otra forma de decir números o cifras is figures, this Via Verde is 10,000 kilometers of trails all over Spain. That's awesome. So in Spain, you have some really good options to do some ecotourism. The next form of travel we talked about before, I think of the rail pass, the Euro pass. And I remember when I discovered that. It was one of the greatest discoveries in the world. I think every American on their bucket list has take a rail pass around Europe and backpack in every major city. Doesn't that sound like the Grand Tour? Yeah, as I said, we're just copying those guys in the 17th century. And we're doing it on a shoestring budget, con poco dinero. So trains. I've got to say something, though. In Spain and in Europe in general, you guys are light years ahead of us in the United States. I feel like we didn't really invest in train travel. In the United States, we invested more in the automobile. And speaking of automobile, how could we forget about road trips? I don't like cars very much, but I have to say, I love road trips. I love the playlist, the cooler with some goodies in it, cooler siendo neverita. And in the bonus part of today's show, I'm going to tell you guys about some of my favorite road trips that I've taken around the United States. I'll give you some tips and even some contacts, people you can look up if you're in the area. We use this expression, look me up if you're in New York. It really means to call them or to contact them. Then we need to talk about ships, the original ocean liners, and now cruise ships, which I was looking into it a little bit, and I wanted to see what the difference was. And obviously the destinations. Supposedly, an ocean liner is all about the trip. So it's about London to New York, whereas cruises are about stopping at many destinations. But another difference that I came across is that cruise ships, have a flat bottom, and you shouldn't take them into the deep ocean. Not a good idea. That's why you won't see many cruise liners crossing the Atlantic. They're usually in shallow areas. Shallow, poco profundo. And I have to say, there's another one that's on my bucket list. I've taken train trips, I've taken road trips, but I have never been on a cruise. And I think I would like it. You get beautiful views, a buffet. Oh, that's dangerous. I heard that there's a buffet. You can literally eat all day. Well, at least they have gyms on board. Maybe I can balance it out. So I'm dying to go on a cruise. My grandmother was going to take us on a cruise around Sicily to see some of where our roots are from, my family, my Italian family, my Sicilian family. But we never made it, so I've got to do it. I still got to make that cruise happen. But as I said, right now, nobody is traveling. I don't even think anybody's making plans, to be honest. So hopefully this is taking you on a little trip today. Another thing I worry about with any kind of travel by ship, whether it's a cruise or an ocean liner, I think I would get seasick. Mareado. It's a very logical word in English, seasick. And I saved the best for last. My favorite form of travel is flying. I love to fly because you get a bird's eye view. For me, my vacation starts the moment I get to the airport and I see the planes and I see everybody going to their different destinations. It's exciting to me. And the airline industry right now is going through a very difficult time. Just imagine how many people are not flying right now. They're losing millions of dollars a day. It's a hard industry to make money in anyway. And it's come under a lot of scrutiny or a lot of criticism lately as well because of the carbon emissions and all of this. But I have to say, it's still my favorite form of travel. And you know why? I think it's because I link it to some of my earliest memories. And I'm going to tell you all about those early memories, flying to Spain from JFK Airport when I was a little kid. I'm going to share some of those memories with you in the bonus part of today's show. Plus, I'll give you some good vocabulary to know at the airport. That said, I want to send a shout out to all my patrons. Thank you so much. Guys, if you're enjoying this show, you've got to thank my patrons. They support the work I do every month. And if you guys are interested in becoming a patron and getting exclusive bonus content, classes with me, PDFs that accompany every episode, find out more. Check it out at patreon.com/Alberto Alonso. Now, I don't have time to send a shout out to all 77 of my patrons, but I'm going to send a shout out to some of you. So thank you, Javier, Eva, Mila, Desiree, Alex, Patricio, Loles, and my interstellar students, Carmen, Pilar, and Diana. Thank you so much. This would not be possible without you. If you guys want to join our exclusive online community, find out more at patreon.com/Alberto Alonso, and you can receive bonus audio every week for as little as €3 a month. That said, we've got to wrap up this episode. But remember, there's a bonus part, and if you're not sure if you want to become a patron or not, let me know. I'll send you the bonus stuff for free just to see what you think. In the bonus part, I'm going to tell you guys about my experiences. We'll also look at some key vocabulary that can get you out of a bind, un apuro, plus the first travel agency, and we'll look at some really cool travel quotes, citas de viaje. All that and much more in the bonus part of today's FYI.